Why do pool pros often use shots that amateurs never see? My name is Adam, and in today's video I'm gonna analyze 3 very interesting scenarios where amateurs often make completely different decisions than pros, which sometimes seems surprising. Do they know something what we don't know? Let's find out. We are facing this quite long 6 ball, and our goal is to get shape on the 7 ball, which is located in the center area. I am pretty sure that most amateurs and even more experienced players would try to just roll that ball with no spin, because this shot guides the cue ball along its natural path. So with good speed control we can land in the center area for the 7 ball to the left side pocket. However, I believe that every player is aware of the risk of slow rolling, because even a tiny mistake on the cue ball can result in a big miss. Cue ball is located in a really awkward place, and I believe that some players would choose to use outside spin and another rail during positioning. In this case we have much higher speed control, but this time we face the risk of a swerve effect on the cue ball, because we use a lot of side spin and low speed, so there is quite a high risk of a miss. These 2 solutions seem to be the best choices, and I think that personally I would choose the second option, but let's take a look at what Jayson Shaw does instead in exactly the same situation. He decides to use a much firmer stroke and guides the cue ball 4 rails around the table to get shape on the 7 ball into the bottom right corner.
Oh, that's a heck of a stroke right there.
This attempt requires applying just a bit of low left spin, however, speed control is key to landing in the right place, because if we use too less or too much speed, we'll simply lose the cue ball. In my opinion, it was a great choice by Jayson, considering how important the moment was, and that shot paved the way for him to win the entire match.
Jayson Shaw, what an out, Danny. Have you ever seen a better run out on the hill? I mean,
Moving on, we reach this extremely uncomfortable thin cut shot on the 6 ball, after which we need to get shape on the 7 ball, which is placed right next to our current ball. I am almost certain that most amateurs would choose to just roll that ball, but because we experience quite a large angle, we are exposed to the throw effect, so the cue ball can simply push the object ball off its natural path. Another problem makes the A ball, because even if we make the 6 ball, we have to be careful not to hide behind that ball. So in this case, some players will decide to use a lot of inside spin to shorten the angle of reflection on the side rail and get right before the A ball, or simply make contact with it, which in both cases would give a pretty good position on the 7 ball. However, in this case, using so much inside spin carries a huge risk of missing, because we can simply misjudge the contact between the cue ball and the 6 ball and hit way too thick. There is actually one more very promising option where we have to apply a lot of outside spin and use not that much speed. The cue ball travels 4 rails around the table along a very predictable path and lands in this area for the 7 ball into the left side pocket. And honestly, this is probably the shot I would choose in a match, because firstly I use a much more confident stroke, so I have much better control of the cue ball, and secondly, the left spin actually helps me send the 6 ball toward the pocket due to the spin-induced throw effect, which in this situation slightly pushes it to the inside. These were the shots I'm sure most players would choose, but to find out our pro choice, we have to see what Joshua Filler does instead. he decides to make a very hard hit with top left spin and guides the cue ball along a very unobvious path to get shape on the 7 ball to the bottom left corner. This is an extremely difficult shot because it requires contact with the left side rail close to the corner pocket, where left spin plays a key role as it takes a lot of power from the cue ball and allows it to stay in the middle of the table. Personally, I would never have chosen such a solution, but it is certainly a very interesting and creative shot worth remembering. The next situation is an example where we experience perhaps the biggest difference between pro and amateur shot selection. We are facing this quite easy 5 ball to the bottom right corner, and we need to get shape on the 7 ball, which is located close to the bottom rail. I think it will come as no surprise that many players would simply choose to pot the 5 ball with a bit of topspin and leave the cue ball close to the right side rail, as it makes automatic contact with the 9 ball. This shot is not entirely optimal because firstly we leave a quite uncomfortable cut shot on the 7 ball, and secondly, intentional contact with the 9 ball may go wrong because we may snooker ourselves behind that ball. To avoid this problem and get lower on the table, we can decide on another solution, where this time we try to hit the cue ball with a lot of inside spin and make contact with the side rail between the 9 ball and the side pocket. This allows us to move much lower and get shape on the 7 ball to the bottom right corner. However, firstly, due to high amount of side spin, we can easily miss the 5 ball, and secondly, we can misjudge the contact and scratch in the side pocket. In this situation, I don't see any other possible solutions, and personally I would probably choose the first option, but at this point, let's see what a shocking and unexpected decision Johann Chua made in exactly the same situation. He decides to play a deep draw shot with extreme left English and reaches the 7 ball from behind using 2 rails. This is a truly shocking but perfectly executed shot, which I believe was caused by a fear of trying to make intentional contact with the 9 ball and leaving the cue ball on the right side of the table with more angle on the 7 ball. On my table, in my conditions, I had a huge problem getting the cue ball low enough, and in the end I only managed to create this position, which was still optimal at all. So why did pros choose completely different solutions than amateurs, and what do all these shots have in common? There are actually 3 major differences. First of all, we are talking about multi-rail positioning. And for a lot of amateurs, this is the moment where pool feels scary. The instinct says more rails means more danger. But pros see it completely differently. To them, rails are tools, and the more rails they use, the more predictable the cue ball becomes. Secondly, we are talking about accurate positioning. Not just getting shape, but getting the right shape. Most amateurs are happy if they land somewhere near the next shot. But pros are aiming for something much more specific, exact cue ball placement. And that's what makes their runouts look effortless. Amateurs play to stay at the table, pros play to make the next shot easier than the last one. And finally, we are talking about table conditions, and this factor is definitely huge. Higher table speed and a slippery cloth make pros more likely to play more difficult shots using more rails and remain very accurate at the same time. Pros know perfectly well how the cubel will behave, and that's why they prefer to take high risk to achieve greater reward. Another thing you can do to improve your game is visiting Poolbilliards.co, a platform that offers access to ready-made patterns, but where you can also create your own exercises in the advanced editor. I always use the platform in my training, and you can too by using the link in the video description, which will give you 20% of premium membership and full access to all functions. So, if you start thinking less about what feels easiest and more about what gives you the highest margin for error, you will start playing more like a pro.
Where are you going, Cuba?
Just incredible.
What do you think about this mindset? Share your feedback in the comments section, and if you found this video helpful and interesting, don't forget to leave a thumbs up for me and subscribe to my channel to never miss my new videos. Thank you very much for watching and see you in the next video. Take care.